Welcome to another installment of Late Night with Patrick Miller. No, it's not late. For some of you, it might not even be night. That's the best I got as far as a show name. It's really bad, so if you have a better name, I'm all ears. But tonight, we're going to do something a little bit different. So I've been ranting about video games and about fighting games for, before the stream, like the actual game playing portion of the stream for a while. And I've been having a lot of fun doing it, talking about all kinds of different games and like current events. Sometimes I like dive deep into kind of new stuff or like an idea. Today I wanted to talk a little bit more about my personal motivations for playing fighting games. I've been playing them seriously since I was about 14 or 15. I started playing with Street Fighter 2 back when pretty much like everyone at that age was playing fighting games. But I got into it seriously. Like I got bitten by the competitive bug or when I was around like maybe 15, and I've stuck with it pretty much ever since. That's not normal for most people, but it did kind of it kind of hooked me, and I wanted to talk a little bit about why that was. And honestly, what it comes down to is not because I think I'll ever win Evo, even though I've always wanted to, of course, like I think everyone has. It's not really because of the drive for competition for its own sake. It's because fighting games taught me a whole lot about how to improve and get better at things in general, like how to acquire new skills. It really opened the doors for to study the process of skill acquisition and learning for me. But it also it made me convinced that with the right mindset, fighting games can legit make you a better person, not just in terms of what you can do, but who you are. And that is fundamentally the promise that I think fighting games have for people, because that's what it's done for me. And so when you see me doing these streams, or if you've read my book, thanks for reading, if you've read my book about fighting games, if you ever wonder, like, why is this dude spending so much time on fighting games? Why does he love them so much? And it's a question I ask myself sometimes, right? The answer is, it always boils down to what I get out of fighting games for myself, and that really is a mechanism to test myself. And learn how to learn things, learn how to understand other people, and I'm sure that's things that other games or activities can teach you as well. But for me, I got it from fighting games, and so I feel like for the people who are here with us, right, the people like you and me who are playing these games, I thought I'd unpack what it is I love about them so much, in the hopes that you'll love that too, right? Because I think that's one of the profoundly transformative things about fighting games, is that they can make you a better person. They can make you better at what you do. They can make you want better things for yourself. And to me, that's really important. It helped me out a lot in terms of figuring out kind of what I'm supposed to be doing in this world and so on. I know, big stuff for a video game stream. So I wanted to dissect a little bit of what it is I love about fighting games, and then talk about why the way the games are and the way they work kind of turned me into this like path of like kind of gradual but dedicated self-improvement. Okay, so to start with, I think we can just look at a fighting game and how it differs from kind of other video games in general, right? Like fighting games are special in that it's pretty much all about direct, usually 1v1 competition, right? Nothing is hidden, right? So, well, except for in Rising Thunder, where we hide cooldowns and variants and stuff like that. But in general, like pretty much everything in a fighting game is above board. There are no secrets other than what you find in the game, which the other person may not know about. And if you're playing at a low level, that could just be, oh, I didn't know this move exists, or I didn't know this move beats this other move. At a high level, it could be like, I didn't know the engine was exploitable in this manner, whatever. But fundamentally, fighting games are similar to other competitive activities, right? Like chess is it's 1v1. Everything in chess is immediately apparent, right? So there's no hidden variables other than your opponent's brain. But there's no there's no like real time element to it. There's a time element if you play time chess, but for me, what fighting games really boil down to is they're about competitive empathy, right? I think it was Adam Saltzman, actually, I think, who was talking. I was talking with him. For those who don't know him, he's an indie developer. He made Cannibalt, if you remember that game on mobile. Super awesome guy. He also shows up to Evo every year and just comes to watch, which is pretty great. And we were talking about it, and he described fighting games to me once as basically like it's kind of like a empathy for psychopaths machine, right? Where like we want to study each other. When I have an opponent, I want to learn as much as I can about them. I want to put myself in their shoes. I want to learn everything they're doing and thinking but I don't want to do it so I can be a better friend or a better partner or a better person. I want to do it so I can crush them. and so we end up developing these really strong skills for understanding people. And to this day, I maintain that there are people who I know better than than my family, than my close friends, than my parents, right? I know some people better than that because I've played them in fighting games for years and years and years, and I get to understand what makes them tick and how they think and how they respond to stress, right? So these games are about competitive empathy, right? They're first and foremost, they're about learning what your opponent is thinking and how that changes what they can do, because you know what they can do, right? You know what their character can do, so you know there are moves that they have available to them, but you don't know what they're thinking, and so you have to figure that out, right? If you get good at that, then you can think about what your opponent wants to do based on what you see them doing and how you think they're feeling. Then you can predict them, and if you can predict them, then you can beat them, and that's true for pretty much every fighting game, right? So I think it's really cool that fighting games develop these kinds of skills, right? That you have, that, I need to learn how to read you. I need to detect patterns in your behavior. I need to try and figure out, like, how, say, me hitting you with the same mix-up 3 times in a row is going to affect the way you deal with the 4th, right? All these things are really, really cool. But then there's kind of a little twist that fighting games throw in, right? Fighting games are it's not like a mixed martial arts competition where there's, I've trained myself and I have, everything that I'm capable of doing personally are all my available options, right? Like the possibility space in a fighting game is not infinite. It's constrained by your character, right? You are not the character. I am not Ryu or Athena or anyone who I play in a fighting game. I'm me. I'm Patrick. Hi, nice to meet you. And I choose characters because they give me tool sets, right? So I take the skills that I've developed, the competitive empathy skills, right, as well as like the actual hand dexterity and blah 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 blah, right? I take those skills and then I choose a character to express them, right? And fundamentally, that's what a character is. It's a tool set, right? So Ryu has a tool set, right? He's got his fireball, he's got his dragon punch, he's got like a great crouch, medium kick, blah, 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 blah. And Zangief is a character with a different set of tools. And so a fighting game is about how my brain, mediated through these tools, the Ryu tools, how that matches up against my opponent's brain, mediated through Zangief's tools, or whatever, right? But the cool thing about those tools is, and those characters, right, the kind of bag of moves that we call a character in a fighting game, the cool thing about it is that those tools make some parts of the game easy and some parts of the game hard, right? So, as an example, right, Ryu makes certain aspects of the game easy. He's got an invincible anti-air that pretty much dominates the kind of the horizontal space right in front of him, and then the vertical space immediately above him. He's got a fireball which controls horizontal space. Controls horizontal space across the level, right? And he's got some great normals that let him kind of help control range, to give him opportunities to use those fireballs, right? He doesn't have a really devastating command grab like Zangief. He doesn't have say slow fireballs like Guile, right? So Ryu's tools are designed to make some things easy, right? Which is like a kind of a hard bet on space control, right? Like I can't really hedge my bets easily with a fireball or with a dragon punch. It's all or nothing. So if there's the right action to perform, then that's great and I win. And if it's the wrong action, then I usually eat shit and die, right? Whereas like a Zangief, he has his game plan is to get in, so all his tools are about getting in, and so his tool set makes that part easier, right? It makes the footsies aspect of the game a little bit easier, just because you have so many different tools to deal with and a high payoff once you get in and you use those tools successfully. But he doesn't have other things that make the game hard, right? Like a keep away game, it's hard for him to stall, right? Because he doesn't have projectiles to zone. So fundamentally, like you look at a fighting game, and what it is there are certain aspects of the game which I want the character to handle for me, right? Or I think, oh man, this maybe it's this part of the game is really hard and I'm bad at it, right? So if let's say reacting to jumps in the neutral game at footsie's range, it's something I'm personally bad at. So if I want to optimize my chances for success, I should pick characters with one button anti-airs or easy anti-airs to make that aspect of the game easier, right? So characters then are interacting with my brain, right? So if I play a character which is good at anti-airs, then I don't need to worry so much about the anti-airs, and I can play to my strengths, which probably the character is less good at, but I personally am better at, right? So let's say I'm okay at footsies, right? That means that I can play characters which are, maybe their built-in footsies tools aren't that great, right? They don't have great range pokes, or they don't convert into damage that easily. But since I, as a person, am good at it, I can compensate for it, right? And in exchange for that weakness, that character should have a strength somewhere else that compensates for one of my weaknesses, right? The thing is, if I'm playing that character, so if I'm good at footsies and I'm playing a character that's bad at footsies but good at something else that I'm bad at, then what I'm doing is I'm telling my brain to get better at footsies, right? Because it's something I have to compensate for in my character. And I'm not getting better at anti-airs because that's something, or whatever it is, whatever the other thing is, because that's something the character is already good at, right? In other words, picking your character choice, the tool set that you use to play fighting games, the way I think of that is actually is not just as an avatar, right? It's not just who I'm controlling on screen. It's also an exercise for my brain, right? So I think of characters not just as this is the person I choose to win, or this is who I like playing. I think of it as this is what I want my brain to work on, right? Because anything that a character is good at, my brain doesn't have to work as hard to do. And anything that a character is bad at, my brain is going to have to work overtime to compensate, right? That's pretty cool, I think. Especially because in the fighting game community, when you look at who's on stream and you look at who's getting paid attention to and so on, we emphasize competitive results above pretty much everything, right? You know who won Capcom Cup? Kazunoko. You probably heard that name a lot if you watch the stream and you play fighting games because he won Capcom Cup. Prior to him winning Capcom Cup, you might not have known as much about him, right? On the other hand, so in general, as a community, we tend to focus the competitive elements of things. And so we see players that mostly stick with one character because that optimizes their chances for success. And so we start adopting that as well, right? A lot of people, as part of the ritual of learning to play fighting games, especially early on in your learning, in your kind of your learning curve, you'll pick a main and you'll stick with them. Right? So when I first started playing Rising Thunder, I played almost no one but Crow for the first 2 months. I played Crow and a little bit of Edge. I might have messed around here and there and learned movesets, but for the most part, I just played Crow. And that's all I was doing to try and learn the game. And the reason I did that is and it's in part because that's what everyone does, right? It's in part because I want to keep on learning more and more with that character so I can get good with him, so I can get better, a better ranking on the ladders and so on, whatever, right? I want to learn new stuff, and part of it is I want to be the best Crow out there, right? I want everyone to know that Patrick Miller's Crow is godlike. He's so good. You don't want to fuck with that. If he picks Crow, you're screwed, right? And that's a pretty cool feeling. But in terms of the tool set that I'm playing with my brain, it doesn't, there's kind of diminishing returns, right? It would be like going to the gym, and if every day I went to the gym and all I did was squats. There's nothing wrong with squats. Squats are a fantastic exercise. They work a shit ton of your body. If you're going to work on one part, if you're only going to do one exercise, squats are not a bad one to pick. But why would you do just that, right? Why would you only want to grow your brain in one way? That doesn't mean that just focusing on one thing is a bad thing, right? And I'll get more to this later, right? I think you do want to pick a main, and again, I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But if you only do that for your entire fighting game career, your entire tenure with one game, you're going to burn out, right? Your brain won't be growing as much as it could be, and I think you as a person will probably just get bored, right? I think that's pretty cool. So I think of these characters as kind of different tools to grow your brain. I'm going to talk a little bit, I'm going to give an example. And that example is actually me playing Ryu, which is, as far as my fighting game career goes, so as many of you guys watching the stream may know, for a good chunk of kind of the latter part of Street Fighter 4, people started seeing me as a Ryu player and a Ryu main. In part because the book that I wrote is mostly about how to play Ryu, and that's pretty. And I wrote that book around Ryu intentionally. I picked Ryu consciously, about maybe 2 years before I wrote the book, in part because I was always bad at playing Shotos in games. So I got into CVS2, and I liked playing Shotos. I liked playing Ryu and Ken and Akuma in that game. They were a lot of fun, and the moveset's comfortable and whatever. But I fucking sucked at it. I couldn't do Dragon Punches consistently at all. I rolled too much, so I relied on roll DP and roll super shenanigans. My footsies were ass. It was terrible. And to this and I love CVS2, and I played it for a long ass time. But I started picking K Groove after about a year and a half of CVS2 because I knew that if you put me with a character who has a Dragon Punch and you gave me a groove that has a roll, then all I was gonna fucking do is roll and Dragon Punch, and I wouldn't get better. But I didn't know how to stop it other than to change my character selection and pick a different groove that didn't have roll, so I couldn't do that. So I knew this about myself. I knew that, like, fundamentally, I'm not good with Dragon Punch characters, or at least I wasn't in like 2011, 2012, 2013. So when Street Fighter 4 came out, I was mostly playing Rufus. I played some Sagat and some Akuma, but I was mostly playing Rufus because I didn't have to worry about that, right? His Dragon Punch is not nearly as much of a temptation. And then I kind of fell off Street Fighter 4 for a while after Vanilla, and so what happened was when I started getting back into Street Fighter 4, I thought, oh man, this is kind of boring. So around 2011, 2012 was when I started getting back into Street Fighter 4, and then I started thinking, man, I kind of don't like the top tier, but maybe I should learn how to play Ryu and like actually get good at him, right? So I did. And my Ryu still isn't that good, but it's a lot better than it used to be. I still Dragon Punch a lot, but I don't Dragon Punch nearly as much as I used to be. And fundamentally, like, I learned a lot more about the game, about how to play footsies better, about how... So for all of y'all talking about timelines, don't worry about it, all right? I played Rufus in 2008 when it came out in Japan. I played... and then I got back into Street Fighter 4 in like 2011, 2012. Excuse me. Anyway, so I played Ryu, and pretty much only Ryu in Arcade Edition 2012, and then Ultra, just because I wanted to get better at it. And I don't even enjoy Street Fighter 4 that much as a game these days. Like, it's an okay Street Fighter. It's not great, or it's not the best in my opinion. It's pretty good, but I wanted to play only Ryu just to see what that did to my brain and what it did for my Street Fighter skills. And what it did was it forced me to stop looking too much for broken stuff, because Ryu doesn't have any in that game. And it forced me to get like better at working with a limited tool set that relies mostly on how to read your opponent, right? The beauty of Ryu's tools is that there's no ambiguity, there's not much safety. Either you're making the right decision and you wreck shit, or you make the wrong decision and you get wrecked. And that was actually really important for me, because that made it so that when I was playing a fighting game, when I was playing Street Fighter, I wasn't playing against a tier list. I wasn't playing against a bunch of tech that I had memorized from a website or watched videos or whatever. What I did was I had very simple tools that everyone knew about, and the only way I could win is if I was legit reading my opponent's mind. And that was the kind of Street Fighter that I wanted to get good at, right? So you'll notice none of that was about tournament results. My tournament results have been booty for years, right? The best that I've done in Street Fighter 4 tournaments, besides like the first tournament in Vanilla, or it'd be Ricky, the best that I've ever done in tournaments was like, I think I almost made it out of my pools in like Evo 2012 or something, right? Tournament results for me have not meant jack shit. But that does, and you know, what my tournament performance is not consistent. But that's the thing about using tournaments as a benchmark for your success, and that's a thing about kind of the tournament mania that we tend to be in as a community. Is tournaments definitely are important, but they're important as a way to test yourself and see if you're getting better. The thing is that the number you're placing doesn't necessarily reflect that, right? Tournament results are really only consistent for like the top 4 for a big tournament, maybe the top 8. After that, like, it's a toss-up as to whether you go 2 and out or you make it like 4 or 5 rounds in the tournament and then run into those same 2 people and lose to them, right? So in either case, you still are losing to people. Just in one, you beat a few people before you lost to them. But fundamentally, your weaknesses are the same in either example, right? So I decided to learn to play Ryu because I was tired of trying to chase tournament results when that hadn't been working for me for about like 10 years at this point, right? So I decided, you know what? Who do I want to be when it comes to Street Fighter? And there's all these people who I can model my game after. Like, who do I want to steal stuff from? Well, like, you know, Justin's pretty cool when he's playing Street Fighter. I'd love to get good at that, but I'm looking at what he's doing, and I don't think that's working for me, right? In the end, what I looked at when I was trying to decide what kind of Street Fighter player I wanted to be was I looked at John Choi and I looked at Daigo. And both of those guys, you play against them, and I've played against both of them. Both of those guys, when you play against them, they feel like they're reading your mind, right? It's not like playing against Ricky, right? Ricky is fucking fantastic at fighting games. She's bodied me more times than I can count. Like, I'm pretty sure like she stole my lunch money for years at this point, right? But playing against Ricky, you feel like you're getting outplayed because she's faster and she knows the game better, that her footsies are immaculate and her space control is perfect. Playing against Daigo or John, you feel like they're in your head, right? That's the only way that I can describe it, is you feel like they're actually telling you what to do so that they can fuck you up. And that was the kind of Street Fighter that I wanted to get good at, right? That's the kind of skill in general I would love to have, right? So I looked at that and I thought, okay, I'm gonna enter tournaments, right? I'm gonna enter tournaments so I can see where I'm getting exposed, right? I can have access, if I enter tournaments, that I can have access to players who will whoop my ass and show me what I'm bad at, right? But I wasn't thinking too hard about how my results from tournament to tournament were improving, right? The best way that I can explain this is that tournaments don't really tell you if you're getting better. They give you a way to surface your weakness. So when you go to a tournament and you lose to some shit you've never heard of before or seen before, then you know, I need to practice this. You might not necessarily know that if you hadn't gone to that tournament. It doesn't tell you, oh, I placed 5th this time and that's better than 9th before, because that's almost entirely up to the luck of the tournament draw, right? That's what I mean when I say tournament results aren't consistent unless you're the top 4 or the top 8 or whatever, because if you're not in that top level bracket, you're not playing against consistent people. And if you're not playing against the same people, you're not really going to know if you're getting better or not, right? So to return to kind of the results of the Ryu experiment, what it did was it helped me get good at footsies, right? People would actually compliment me on my footsies a little bit, which is something that has never happened in my entire life, right? And it taught me to start asking myself questions about what do I think they're thinking? What do I think they're going to do next? Which honestly, and it might sound silly now, but I wasn't thinking too hard about that even in my peak CVS2 days. In my peak CVS2 days, I was mostly thinking like, I want to walk up to this range and hit Fierce a bunch, right? And then, I think he's going to walk forward right now because, due to his rhythm or timing or whatever, so I'm going to hit Fierce now, and now I'm going to go for the super or whatever, right? It wasn't nearly as nuanced as what I think now, which is I think, is he upset? Like, I haven't really done much in about 10 or 15 seconds. Maybe he's getting antsy. I wonder if this guy's patient. How can I test this guy's patience? Okay, should I wake up DP now? Now, let him throw me a couple times. Okay, now he's thrown me 3 times. I wonder what he's thinking. I wonder if he's getting aggressive, right? If he's thinking, now I can open up for a real attack or something. I wasn't asking myself these kinds of questions until I started playing Ryu, because you can't win with Ryu unless you start learning how to empathize with your opponent, which is a pretty cool thing. Like, as a character, Ryu's toolset basically says, hey, you, become a mind reader, right? Become just fucking psychic. And if you are, then this is the character for you, right? That's a pretty cool thing. That was not something that I learned from other characters while playing CVS2 or Third Strike or Marvel or any of those things, right? And I learned a bunch of other things from those characters, but I didn't find the kind of Street Fighter that I wanted to be good at. Right? And I didn't realize that until I started playing Ryu for like years and then wrote a book about it. So that's kind of the core, like, point number 1, right? Is that your characters change your brain, right? Your characters are the exercise that you put your brain through when you're playing fighting games. And so because of that, I think that you should, like, absolutely, if you're trying to compete, if you're trying to take a game seriously, or you're trying to learn something first time, absolutely have a main character. But don't be afraid to experiment. Right? And this kind of goes into the second part of the game, which is I see a lot of people in fighting games get burned out when they feel like, maybe they leave because their character got nerfed in an update. Or maybe they leave because they feel like they picked the wrong horse, right? Like, Jay actually is a really good example. Viscount, Jay Snyder. He will occasionally kind of rant on Twitter about how he got screwed in Street Fighter 5 or Street Fighter 4 and doesn't really play that much because the horse that he picked in the beginning was DJ, right? And that ended up being a bad bet. Which is, if you're trying to maximize your potential for tournament success and minimize your time, then that's kind of the smart way to do it, right? Is to start off early at the same time that everyone else does, pick a character, stick with them, and then hope that you made the right bet early on so that all your time in that character is worthwhile. But if you want to get good, if you want to become a better fighting game player, not if you want better tournament results, if you want to be a better fighting game player, and ultimately if you want to make your brain stronger, then I think that what you do is you pick that main, right? You still have that main, but you don't be afraid to experiment. And a lot of people, I find, in fighting games are afraid to spend time messing around with other characters. They're afraid because they think it'll make them worse. right? And I know that feeling. I know that feeling where like you go to your weekly and you do okay with your main, and then you spend the next week just messing around with some side characters. You go back to the weekly, you play your main, and you get bodied, right? And so you think, oh man, I shouldn't have, I was off my I was out of my groove because I was playing this other character. I'm gonna stick to my main. Fuck it, I'm not experimenting ever again, right? Because you feel like you got worse. And I think that's dangerous, right? Because if you to return that earlier point, you only feel like you got worse because you're taking your tournament success as pretty much the main benchmark of whether you are a better player now than you were the week before. And that's stupid because for most people, tournament success is not, I repeat, not a great key performance indicator for your actual skill. For most players, the only way to actually get worse at a game is to not play it. Right? We don't, like, as a people, right, as a community, we don't know much about how to get better at fighting games, right? We haven't studied the optimal path for learning or teaching fighting games. But we do know is that people who are good at fighting games usually play them a whole bunch, right? And really, like, we haven't really found one thing that says, oh yeah, spending these 3 hours in the training mode with this other character made you worse. That kind of sounds like bullshit to me, right? So really, the only way to get worse at a game is to not play it. So don't worry about whether you think you're performing worse than you were last week, because that's not the right thing to be looking at. The right thing to be looking at is not, are you performing worse? It's, are you a better player than you were the previous week? And that is a question that starts interrogating how your brain is working, right? Are you learning new things? Are you pushing yourself out of your comfort zone? If so, then you're objectively a better fighting game player than you were a week ago. Now your main, whether it's Ryu or whoever, might not be optimal, right? You might have to spend like a couple of days adjusting to get that character up to like to the fine-tuned state, right? And if you don't grind fighting games that much, then maybe like, yeah, you should probably continue practicing with your main, right? Learning new matchups and blah 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 blah. But fundamentally, the only thing that we know about fighting games and getting better at them is that the more time you spend on them, the better you'll get. It may not scale linearly, right? Like at a certain point, there's diminishing returns. I would argue that that you hit the point of diminishing returns much sooner if you're just learning one character than if you're learning a bunch of them. I guess I should probably use this hand because this kind of looks like a graph going up and to the right? Anyway, so if you feel like you're getting worse because your tournament performance suffers from week to week, or maybe you lose a bunch of battle points online or whatever, it's not because you're actually getting worse. It's because you're exposing more mistakes and more flaws in your game knowledge, right? You're finding weaknesses that you didn't know you had, right? The other possibility is that the people around you are getting better faster than you are, right? So that, like maybe you're all running at the same speed, but some people are running faster, right? And if that's the case, that's fantastic, because then you're surrounded by people who can show you how to get better, right? And competition that can keep on exposing you and help you get better. But this is important, right? So far I've been kind of talking about how like tournament performance is not a great indicator of whether you are a better fighting game player now than you were last week, right? Fundamentally, what I'm trying to say here is not that tournament results aren't important or that you shouldn't practice for tournaments. And honestly, I think tournaments are a great motivator to get people playing more. What I am saying is that you cannot trust your feelings when it comes to your own progress, right? Like, if you do worse in a tournament than you did the week before, that feels shitty. But that doesn't mean you're a worse player. Maybe you lost to a person you don't normally lose to, or you're missing combos that you had last time. That doesn't mean you're a worse player. It means that you thought you were better than you actually were, right? You didn't play to the level that you thought you were at. Again, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't pick a main, right? What it means is that there's your feelings are like these little voices in your head, right? Y'all see Inside Out? I haven't, but I saw the trailer, and so I'm going to talk about it. I got a laugh from the peanut gallery. Thanks, babe. It's what you feel about your performance does not accurately indicate your level of skill, right? If you put 40 hours, and that's a lot of fucking time, but let's say you put 40 hours, 10 hours, 15 hours, whatever, into a fighting game between week 1 and week 2, that makes you a better player than you were, even if that 40 hours was spent on a different character who you're never going to play in competition whatsoever, right? Now, why is that? Why am I so convinced that like diversifying your character selection, right, is going to make you a better fighting game player, right? Why am I so convinced about this? Easy. So earlier I had talked about how, how characters shape your brain in different ways, right? remember, fighting games are about empathy. They're about learning how to read your opponent's mind. And if you haven't played your opponent's character, if you haven't played your opponent's character against your own character, right, your own main, whatever that is, then you're never going to be able to completely empathize with your player. These games are amazing. You can literally put yourself in your opponent's shoes. Well, I guess not literally, sorry. You can figuratively put yourself in your opponent's shoes by picking your opponent's character and learning exactly what kind of mental exercises your opponent goes through when they're trying to play a fighting game against yours. That's amazing, right? So as an analog, like when I also do competitive mixed martial arts and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and that kind of stuff. And if I want to learn what another person is thinking, I can't. Right? I can't actually do that. I can try and learn their game plan, but I can't take my brain with all of its experiences and all of its baggage and emotions and this body, whatever, and put it into someone else. I have to try and study them. But with fighting games, you actually get a chance to pick up someone's tool set and think about how that affects you as a person, how it affects the decisions you make. That's pretty fucking cool, right? So this comes up in Rising Thunder all the time. I've been playing every single character for the past 2 months. And I do this because I want to learn, my main is Crow, but I want to learn how other players deal with Crow. I want to learn how other characters deal with each other, that kind of stuff. And there's no way that I can learn it based off of just watching other characters or just playing the matchup on one end. Why would I do that when I can spend time learning the matchup on both ends so that, let's say my stand H is really important in this matchup. If I know that and I know what it feels like to get hit by the stand H a whole lot on the other side of the matchup, then I have a tool, right? That is a cool thing that I know about how my opponent thinks. And if my opponent hasn't done that work, then he probably isn't as smart about this. He probably is not as equipped to empathize with me because I know more about what he's playing than he knows about what I'm playing. That's pretty fucking awesome, right? So fundamentally, if you're trying to get good at fighting games, that means you're going to have to learn how people think. And if you're going to learn how people think, the best option you have in fighting games is to learn how each character works, right? Put yourself in those decisions, right? Like if you're a grappler and you're getting pressured or you're getting beat up on the feet or whatever, right? Learn how to play a poking character that has to deal with those grapplers, right? Like I get this all the time from Zangief players, actually. Zangief players in Street Fighter often feel like this persecuted minority because they have to put up with a whole ton of shit to get in and they don't have options outside and blah, 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 right? And the Ryu versus Zangief matchup feels so unfair. No, I get it, right? It feels unfair because as Zangief, you get hit in the face a whole bunch, right? And yeah, when you get in, the payoff is sweet, but as a player who plays only Zangief, all you remember is the endless fireballs you eat, or the dragon punches, or the fucked up green hand attempts where you end up eating a whole ton of shit, whatever, right? You don't know what it's like as a Ryu player dancing outside the range and being like, oh god, I hope this is not the time that I guess wrong. I hope this is not the time that I mess up my dragon punch and let him in, right? There's a stress on both sides, and if you can understand what the stress feels like, then you're capable of empathizing with your opponent, and that's when you're actually getting better at fighting games. That's when you're actually playing fighting games, instead of just playing characters, right? So, yeah, that was kind of a mouthful, but essentially the takeaway there is, the first one is characters exercise your brain, so choose different characters, and you can exercise your brain in different ways. And then the second is, that will make you a better fighting game player, not by improving your execution with one character or blah, 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 right? Or studying matchups with just your character, right? That won't necessarily improve your main, but it'll improve the mental horsepower that you then apply to your main in competition, right? And that, I think, is how you get better at fighting games, right? Now, some people will say, hey, well, we don't really see that many top players who play multiple characters. When we see top players like Tokido, right? He's playing Akuma. He's going to play Akuma in every game, right? He always fucking picks Akuma, and he's probably going to pick up Tekken 7 just because Akuma is in there, blah, 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 right? Like, if Tokido doesn't pick multiple characters, then why should I pick multiple characters? Well, straight up, you don't really know a whole lot about what Takedo does in his practice, and neither do I, because I don't hang out with Takedo a whole bunch. But what we look at when we see them competing is we see them usually playing one character, right? We see them, we see character specialists and character loyalists, people who develop new tech and blah 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 blah. And that's fucking fantastic. But we don't know all the work that they put in to get there. Right? We don't know how much experimentation they put in, not just with Street Fighter, but with other games as well. Takedo's been playing fighting games since he was like 8 years old or whatever, right? I'm sure that at some point he had a pretty formative time where he was just playing everything that came to mind. I remember him playing C Honda and fucking everyone up at EVO 2002, and I think he won everybody too. I think he won that tournament. So like, don't look at what a pro player is doing now. Don't copy what they're doing now. That doesn't make any fucking sense. They're already pro players. Don't copy what Justin's doing now. We need to figure out what Justin did when he was like 15. And what he did, I think, was mostly lose a lot at Marvel 1. So fundamentally, I don't think, like, when you're looking at how players are succeeding in tournament, don't look at what they're doing on the stage, right? Don't look at what they're doing on stream. Think about what they must have done to prepare, right? What was GamerB doing before he started playing, before everyone saw him at EVO 2010 or whatever it was, right? I don't know. But but I'm guessing that what you do is more about building a wide base and understanding your options, right? And building that sense of player empathy early, right? And then from there, then you can pick once you have that strong base and you've got a developed mind that is capable of playing a bunch of different shit. That's when you can go ahead and pick some stuff and really specialize and put your all into getting good at that. So once again, this doesn't mean don't pick a main. It means pick a main, but don't be afraid to practice, right? Train in fighting games to become a better fighting game player. Don't train in fighting games to optimize your tournament success, right? And this is why I call it, and if you saw my tweets about the stream, this is why I call it playing to learn instead of playing to win. It doesn't mean you're not trying to win. But what you want to realize is that if you're actually in this, right? If you're actually in fighting games, you're not in it for just Street Fighter 4 or just Street Fighter 5 or whatever. You are hooked, and you're going to be stuck in this community for a while because you love this shit. And if you love this shit, then you want to become a better fighting game player. That doesn't mean getting better at just Street Fighter 4 or just Street Fighter 5 or just Rising Thunder or whatever. It means getting better at fighting games. It means working out this brain, because this brain is the one thing that you take from game to game. Well, that and your hands and everything else, right? But I don't get to take Super Turbo Ryu and put him in Street Fighter 5. Wish I could, because that'd be hella fun. But I don't get to do it. What I do get to do is I get to work I get to work Super Turbo Ryu out with this brain, and then this brain I get to take something I get to take with me to other games, right? So I want to become a better fighting game player. And that means, yeah, I have my main and I focus my efforts on that, but it also means I experiment. So what I promised at the beginning of the stream was to talk a little bit about why I'm into fighting games, and why I think they can make you better at other things too, better at real life, right? I drew an earlier analogy to kind of martial arts, right? Pointing out that Street Fighter lets you do things, that fighting games lets you do things that I can't do in IRL fighting competition. I cannot play the same character. Like if I'm gonna go fight, George St. Pierre or something, I can't actually pick GSP into me to see how that matchup works out. As cool as that would be, right? But in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is the art that I focus on, I spent a lot of my early years just trying to specialize in kind of the bottom game and being really tricky with submissions, really tricky with like good sweeps and stuff like that. And eventually I ran into a wall. I ran into like a hard wall in terms of my tournament success and my success against my teammates, in sparring and so on, because I was focusing too hard on what I felt my core game was. Now, if you think about it, that was kind of fucking stupid, because I was like a scrub with just a couple of years of experience. What the fuck do I know about being good at jiu-jitsu or knowing what my core game is, right? If anything, it's something that my coach should have been helping me work on and helping me get more well-rounded, right? And eventually I found a coach who did. Right? He kind of forced me to be well-rounded. And the cool thing was that being like improving the weaknesses in my game then taught me truths about the way grappling and about jiu-jitsu works, that then I could apply to my bottom game as well, right? So if I learn how top game works better in pressure and guard passing and top submissions, then that helps me understand better what I should be avoiding when I'm on bottom, right? What I call this is basically non-linear paths of discovery, right? So like there is not a single way to get good at things, right? Anything. There's no one way to improve at XYZ, whether it's investing or cooking or being like a good partner to your spouse or whatever, right? There's not one way of getting good. And the fact is that for most people, we don't actually know the proper way to get good. So what you can do is you can just throw yourself into as many different things as possible, right? You can explore, you can experiment, right? While keeping a strong understanding of what your strengths and weaknesses are. And then that will give, what you'll find is that insights over here can lead you to a conclusion that helps you out over here, right? It's pretty crazy. Put another way is, if I'm a scrub at anything, then I do not know the right way to get good. So I should just stop worrying about that. Find people who can teach me, right? Listen to them. Listen to how they talk about things, right? To give me a hint of at least how to start thinking about the problems that I encounter and thinking about them as someone who like as a higher ranked belt or whatever. I want to know how they think about dealing with top game or whatever, right? But I should be learning from them, and I should be keeping my mind open, because if I focus too hard on one thing, then I might just end up like, it might just be a waste of time, right? And it's not, and honestly, that's not even the worst part. It's that it's a waste of my time, and it makes me frustrated. And if I get frustrated, then I burn out. And if I burn out, then I'm going to stop doing that thing. And if I stop doing that thing, then I'm not going to get better at it. This is also relevant in writing, right? So one thing that I do a lot of these days is I write. And I've been writing for a long time, since I was like 14 or 15, really. And what I've discovered is that, I kind of like, for a while, I kind of lost interest in writing as a craft. It's a thing that I did like for work, and it's a thing that I occasionally do for fun. And if you follow me on Twitter at pattheflip, then I write a bunch of stupid shit, which I'm actually kind of sorry for inflicting upon you, but you all seem to like it, so whatever, you're weird. But with writing, I've been motivating myself to get better by experimenting with different styles, different formats, different topics, to see if I can make the core writing, which I do, which is mostly kind of like expository, instructional stuff, thinking, basically trying to teach people how to do things or explain concepts, like break complicated concepts down into simple ones. I've been trying to experiment just to see if I can learn anything from other formats or topics or subjects, and then bring that back to what I want to do and what I'm good at, right? So like earlier this week, I wrote about food. I wrote about In-N-Out and burgers, and why I think burgers are important, and why I think In-N-Out's the shit, because it is, and you should read it. But that kind of experimentation in turn then affects the way that I apply myself to other skills. So fundamentally, what I'm saying here is, when it comes down to it, the path to mastery is unclear. No one has really managed to map it out, right? Even like if you've read that silly Malcolm Gladwell book, Outliers, I think it was, right? Like the best he gets is like, oh, it takes 10,000 hours of doing something to be an expert, right? But that doesn't, for one, that seems kind of bullshit to me. Though I'm sure 10,000 hours, like when you do anything for 10,000 hours, I would hope you're good at it, right? But there is kind of a point there, right? And the point is that like, there's no secret that I or anyone else can give you to succeeding, right? But if you're ever at a loss for what to do to get better at something, the answer is usually spend more time doing it. Now, you might end up doing a slightly different thing, right? Like, if I want to get better at jiu-jitsu, I want to practice, then I should spend more time doing jiu-jitsu. That doesn't mean I should only practice my ground game or my submissions. I should be practicing everything, right? But it also means don't just learn by copying what top players do, right? Just make sure you're consistent, and make sure, so one is like, make sure you're consistently putting the time in, right? Because the one thing you'll never get back in this world is time. The second thing is push yourself outside your comfort zone, right? So if you don't like playing grapplers and fighting games, and I don't, play some grapplers in a fighting game. I've been playing a whole bunch of Talos for the last month and a half just to learn how that shit works, right? If you consistently push yourself outside your comfort zone, then your brain gets smarter, right? While you're doing all this, and this is kind of the part where I think fighting games really translates into personal self-improvement. When you're doing all this, you learn to study your own behavior. You learn to analyze your ups and downs, right? Just like I said earlier when I was talking about tournament performance, the main problem with using tournament performance with your KPI is that when you do worse from one tournament to another, that makes you feel shitty. And for some people, maybe that does actually motivate you. But for a lot of people, it just makes you, like, that happens so much that maybe you place 7th, and then you place 9th, and then you place 10th, and then you place 7th, and then you place 10th, right? That up and down is hard. It's hard to, if you tie your self-esteem in a fighting game to your week-to-week performance, right? That's fucking hard. It's exhausting. It's stressful. And it feels shitty when you're putting time into something and then you think you're getting worse, right? So fundamentally, like, the lesson here is really learn to study your own behavior, right? In this case, like, my feelings are telling me, man, you suck, right? Shut the fuck up, feelings. Fuck off. That's like, I know that logically I know that I'm not a worse player this week than I was last week. I just may have performed worse in this one venue, right? But if my feelings are telling me you should quit or whatever, then that's a really hard barrier to deal with, right? And so now that I know that about myself, I try not to let tournaments get to me, right? I can think, oh man, I feel shitty about how I did in this tournament. I went 2-0. I even have the Broken Shear shirt that says, please God, don't let me go 2-0. It's an amazing shirt. Anyway, I know that I feel shitty when I perform badly in a tournament, and part of that is because I think that I got worse. But I know here, right, the straight up logical part of my brain is like, no, there's no way you get worse. You're playing fighting games all the time. There's no way that you're a worse fighting game player now than you were before, right? So if you see what I'm doing there, it's taking those empathy skills that you develop in Street Fighter, in any fighting game, about your opponent, and it's applying it to me, right? And that's actually, I think, the coolest shit in fighting games, right? So, like, we talk a lot about how fighting games can be this beautiful conversation between two people, right? And it's a funny conversation because it's usually walk forward and backward and press medium a whole bunch. Blah, blah, blah. Great conversation, guys. I'm fully convinced in fighting games' power to let two people communicate and learn a lot more about each other. But what I actually think the most powerful shit in fighting games is that you then learn to apply that same skill, right? The skill of analyzing someone's behavior and figuring out what they're feeling and figuring out how that changes your actions, and you get to apply it to yourself, right? So like when I get thrown 3 times in a row, or maybe I'm just not anti-airing stuff, now I have the presence of mind to think, the fuck is wrong with me? Why am I not doing this? Right? And then that gets me to start thinking about how I can do it better. And then that gets me to start thinking about how I can break things down and make myself an even better player, right? So it's the capacity of metacognition, right? It's the capacity to step outside and look at my own pattern of behavior and diagnose things. Oh, I'm missing a lot of anti-airs and I'm getting irritated and frustrated. I didn't even realize that. I didn't realize in the moment that I was feeling frustrated because I was too busy getting hit by jump-ins, right? But now that I notice this about myself, now it's something that I can change, right? I can study my own behavior, I can study my own ups and downs, and I can analyze how my emotions turn into action, just like I study my opponents. That is a pretty cool thing, right? Because that is what lets you get an idea of how you can become more awesome, right? So in a match, I'm studying my opponent. But what that's actually doing is that's me practicing those skills so that then I can apply them to myself. So when I'm down on my fighting game ability, I can think, oh man, I know I'm down because I'm not really feeling like playing, or I don't feel like practicing my main, or maybe I feel like I should just go do something else. Well, that's probably because I did badly in tournament last week. And since I did bad in tournament last week, I kind of don't want to play because I feel like that's just going to remind me of how bad I did. And so I'm actually going to be a worse player, right? It's not that I'm objectively a worse player because I lost at a tournament. What happens is I lost at a tournament, and so I feel shitty. And when I feel shitty, that's when I start playing less. And if I play less, then I'm actually a worse player. And that's the worst, right? That fucking sucks. So you start to be able to diagnose these patterns in your behavior, right? You start to think, oh man, this is actually a blocker. This is preventing me from getting good at something that objectively I do care about, right? And that's being good at fighting games. So in order to counteract this, what should I do? Well, I should find ways to keep on playing fighting games and stay active, in between tournaments, even if I do badly, even if I feel shitty about it, right? Because I know that I don't actually feel shitty about it. I don't feel shitty about, I feel shitty about my performance, but I still have fun playing these games, right? I have fun learning them and practicing them and playing against other people. It's just that when I compete and I do poorly, I think that reflects badly on myself, and I think I got worse. But I know I didn't actually get worse. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to develop strategies to make sure that I continue playing and continue leveling up. And those strategies are usually stuff like, hey, try a different character, or play a different game. Mess around with fucking poverty fighters on Fightcade or whatever. Right? As long as you're playing, you're working that brain and you're getting better. That, of course, is a skill set that's also applicable to the rest of your life, right? And so this is the part where I wrap things up in a nice bow, and I talk a little bit about how I get into fighting games, right? So I started playing with CVS 1, technically, was what got me started posting on Shoryuken. But I didn't, and really what happened was I was I think it was my sophomore year of high school. And I was at a debate tournament because I did high school debate, and I was actually pretty good at debating. I was at a school that was very competitive. I did Lincoln Douglas debate. If any of you guys are forensics enthusiasts, that's strangely enough, that's what competitive debate is called. Like, the organization is called the National Forensics League, or NFL, which they really fucked up with that acronym. But I was a debater in high school, and I managed to do pretty well as a freshman and a sophomore, pretty much coasting off of just like being smart and being at a school with a lot of good tools for getting better. We had a great coach, we had a great program, and like it's one of those things where if you are if you're set up to and you're trained right early on, then you can just body people even if you suck at debate because you had a good coach, right? Like a good coach will get you like half the way there. And so I was debating, and at a debate tournament, actually, my buddy Brian took me off to a pizza place in between rounds, and they had a CVS1 cabinet, and I was like, oh, there's a bunch of people watching these two guys fight in Street Fighter here. Oh, I want to do that. And I quartered up, and I think I won my first round, and people were like, oh, right. I was like, oh shit. Well, this is something that I have to do for the rest of my life because it feels that good, right? And so I continued to debate, and I continued to debate while continuing to also play Street Fighter. It's actually pretty funny because like the dudes at the arcade, I was at the Berkeley arcade, the Bearcade, rest in peace. The dudes at the Bearcade would know me because I showed up all the time after that, but I would occasionally come in a suit and tie, and that's because I was dressed up for a debate tournament that was at UC Berkeley, right? The people in debate knew me as the kid who was playing like Marvel superheroes versus Capcom, or it was Marvel versus Street Fighter on an emulator, like on my laptop in between debate rounds. Because that's what I was doing in between rounds to chill out. I was just like fucking shit up and and like final justice and all that stuff, right? And so, I spent several years of my life doing high school debate, 4 of them actually, because I was in high school for 4 years. That makes sense. What happened was I ran into a wall in debate. I was like, man, I don't know why. Like, I looked at my peers, and my peers at school and my peers at other schools who had like, I went to debate camps, and I fucking like, and like, yeah, I went to debate camps over summer. I'm a huge nerd. That's not news at this point. But people that I know, and people who I considered myself like, hey, I'm just as smart as them. Like, why are they winning and why I'm not, right? Like, I could never make it out of brackets, right? I've only like qualified for elimination rounds like twice in my entire life. And these guys who some of them I've actually beaten in debate rounds, they were performing more consistently, and I didn't know why. Right? I was like, well, I'm going to the camps, and I've got these great coaches and whatever, right? At the same time, I'm playing Street Fighter, right? And in Street Fighter, I quickly learned that it doesn't matter who I pick if I'm not practicing. If I don't know how to do the moves, then I'm going to lose. If I don't know what the other character can do, then I'm going to lose. If I don't know who the other person is and how they think, then I'm going to lose, and so on and so on and so on. So on weekends, so I got myself a Dreamcast, I got myself a stick, and I started practicing how to do Dragon Punches, and I play the like CVS2 Endless Mode and blah 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 blah. On weekends, I'd go over to my friend's house, really good friend Alan, and we'd just play, right? And we'd just play random select CVS2 because it's hella fun, and gradually we'd just put in the time and we'd get better. We'd see videos online, we'd practice stuff. And it's about the end of my high school career, right? I wrapped up debate, and by then I was kind of coasting in debate, and like I was going to the arcade every day because I was training for Evo, and all my classes like ended at 1, so I would just leave and I'd go hang out at the arcade for 5 hours and I'd get good. And afterwards I thought, oh, I got pretty good at Street Fighter. Like now people kind of know who I am, or at least around here. Like, I was never a top player, but I was pretty good. But I never got good at debate, and it's probably because I was practicing, and kind of realized that like Street Fighter taught me that if I want to be good at something, I shouldn't worry about what the best way is to spend my time. I should just fucking keep on doing it, and that'll make me better. And over the course of doing it, I will learn better tools for practicing and for using my time more efficiently and whatever, right? But fundamentally, I just needed to keep on doing it. And that wasn't something that I was doing with debate. We were the team that I was on was notoriously good, right? Like we traveled all across the country, and it was awesome. It was a great opportunity. We were pretty fucking good, but a lot of us didn't work. Like we wrote our cases last minute on the plane ride. We didn't really practice much. We didn't prepare. We didn't do a whole lot of evidence research. We just coasted through on kind of like our natural ability and our smarts, and that wasn't enough to win. It was enough to win locally, right? Like I went to this fucking elite prep school with a bunch of rich white jackasses, and we're in Oakland, so like. The other teams in our local region were not really that great. They just didn't have the resources to compete, at least until work became the main factor. But like fundamentally, at an early level, it was easy for us to win, and that felt good. But we didn't actually like have to work to win in local tournaments because we were just kind of the more privileged school. And in Street Fighter, ain't none of that shit going around, right? Like especially in the Bay Area, like I was getting mauled against people way better than I am, and also against random scrubs who just roll DP or did Terry's roll rising tackle all the time, right? So it wasn't until after like high school that I kind of realized, oh shit, if I want to get good at something, then I need to practice like a lot. I need to spend a lot of time doing this stuff. Like it's not enough to just be smart, and I think I'm a pretty smart guy. Like but anything that's worth a damn, you can't do just by being smart. You have to get fucking good, right? And that was like it might sound weird in retrospect. I'm sure that's something that we that like as adults, for those of you who are adults in chat, like taking we take that for granted, right? But for me, that was super powerful. It was just like having a world where nothing fucking matters except for how hard did you work, right? And yeah, reaction speed or like the availability of competition, whatever, like that matters, right? But it doesn't matter nearly as much as the time that you put in, right? So fundamentally, like learning how to get good at stuff, I learned that from Street Fighter. But and I think that's pretty cool, right? And like as I've grown as an adult, as I've grown and kind of learned more about myself and fucking learned more about how the works and all this other bullshit, right? I've like that's been a constant conversation in fighting games, right? Like I would have never thought to ask about how a certain move made you feel when I was 22, right? If I fucking slap you in the face with the Crouch Fierce 8 times, I wouldn't be thinking like, oh, so how did that make you feel? Like, what do you think you're gonna do now, right? I would probably be like, fuck off. That's the stupidest thing in the world. Why would anyone think about that, right? And now I'm like, yo, that's amazing. So, like, learning how to play Street Fighter and learning how to play fighting games in general is really what taught me about how you get good at things. And the cool thing about that is not just like, yeah, I learned all these awesome things about kind of like understanding my own brain and how it works, understanding my feelings and how that works. That's all pretty cool. But what's also cool is that I got motivation from all of this, right? Now I'm motivated. What that did was like, once I saw that, like, and I'm like 18 at this point, and I'm thinking like, man, what should I do with my life? And then the default answer is just like, well, it'd be kind of cool to run an arcade. Maybe I want to do that, right? But I looked around and I thought, well, for one, that's kind of a stupid idea from a business perspective. But for two, like, now I know that the secret, and it sounds weird, but like, if I want to get good at something, I can. I can just sit down and I can watch some videos and I can do it a whole bunch. I can find other people who do that too and I can learn from them. Like, it's not an intimidating process anymore. I know how to get good at things. I could get good at whatever the fuck I want, right? I was, it's like a mild tangent, but this is actually how I think about things. Like, I was visiting my girlfriend's family over Thanksgiving, and her old man plays golf, right? And my girlfriend's sister has a boyfriend who also plays golf, and so the two of them were talking about golf, and I was thinking like, do I need to learn like how to play golf to impress them? And then part of me was thinking like, yo, I got the FGC part of my brain thinking like, yo, just spend a year getting hella good at golf because you know you can, and fuck them up, right? Just like spend a year like sandbagging that shit, and then money match the fuck out of them, and then they will have your respect for the rest of your life.
Baby.
Hi. Now I'm not going to do that, because I don't like golf. Maybe I could, but there's that part of my brain now that's unlocked, and it's just like, yo, if I want to get good at anything, I can. All I need to do is just work, right? And work, like, it sounds intimidating, but it's not, right? All you do is you just find something you like and keep doing it. Keep doing it over and over and over and over and over. And yeah, it sucks sometimes, but as long as you know that the more time you spend at something, the better you'll get, all of a sudden, it's not intimidating. It's not about genetics. It's not about, like, the resources that you were born with or whatever. You're just like, oh, you mean all I need to do is practice? Well, that's easy. If I want to just practice it, just make sure that it's something that I like doing enough and I care about enough that I'm willing to do it every day, right? That's not intimidating. It's a lot of work, but presumably it's about something I care about, and so it's not really that much. It doesn't feel like work. right? And so that all of a sudden I got motivated. I got motivated to take my writing more seriously, and then that started opening up different opportunities as far as like, you know, the stuff that I can do, the stuff that I'm good at, right? And so I started studying and writing a little bit like a fighting game and starting to think about, how can I read other stuff and think, oh, this is something really cool. Why is this cool? How can I do this? How can I imitate this? How can I copy this? And then how can I improve on this, right? Same thing with like career stuff, right? Like, I've had some really awesome opportunities in my life. I've been super blessed to just be able to do a lot more awesome shit than I ever thought I was going to be able to do. Like, legit, I did not expect that I'd be ever able to do cool things in my day job. And right now I've got the coolest fucking day job. And it's been a series of cool day jobs, right? Like, not to brag here, but like my first job out of college was a boxing coach. I taught kids how to box. That was fun as hell. And then I got to work for a magazine, and I just got to teach people how to use their computers and do weird shit with them or fix them or whatever, and that was really cool. And then I got to run a magazine, and then I got to run the League of Legends website. Like, that was fucking awesome. And now I get to work on a fighting game with some of the people who I looked up to, like, when I first got into this shit. That's awesome. But all that stuff started, right, because I had this motivation to get good at shit, and that came from fighting games. So fighting games have literally given me like anything that I've ever wanted in life. I've gotten because I played Street Fighter for a kid when I was a kid at 15 years old. And it gave me the motivation to get good at like everything that I do, right? I don't want to waste time on something. Like if I see something and I'm like, well, I could do that, but I don't really care about getting good at it, then why do it? Right? When I can spend that time on stuff that I feel like makes me better as a human being, whether it's reading and writing or you know, like being a more intelligent, like learning how to understand different kinds of art and how that works, learning how to be a better public speaker, all this stuff, all of it comes from fighting games. And that's why this shit's so important to me. So yeah. That's pretty much all I got. I'm glad y'all have been watching, but man, like, I love that you guys do this and that you're into this, that you're into fighting games, because for me, it's like one of the most powerful things that I ever got into as a kid, and I just want to share that with y'all, and I want y'all to share it with me. So thanks for watching. I'm going to take a quick break from the stream, and afterwards we'll play some video games.